In 64 CE, under Emperor Nero, identifying as a follower of Jesus carried a brutal death sentence. Rome was actively hunting Christians. For a community living under constant threat, Mark functioned as an urgent piece of underground literature, a text designed to be read quickly and shared in secret. The narrative begins in the hills of Galilee with a startling momentum. Jesus is a figure of constant, urgent action, moving relentlessly from one town to the next. To emphasize his raw authority, Mark preserves the original Aramaic commands Jesus spoke, words like talitha koum to raise a dead girl, or ephphata to open a deaf man's ears. In a Greek-speaking world, these untranslated fragments kept the physical sound of his voice alive. But this creates a very strange tension. While Jesus performs these works of immense power, he keeps his identity hidden from the public. This is known as the messianic secret.
Throughout the text, Jesus repeatedly commands demons to stay quiet and tells the people he heals to remain silent about what he has done. He even restricts his message to the crowds, speaking almost exclusively in riddles and parables that are notoriously difficult to decipher. Even his inner circle is left in the dark. Peter and the disciples consistently fail to grasp who their leader actually is. This creates a persistent suspense for the reader. If his own followers don't understand him, how can this misunderstood leader survive a direct collision with the Roman Empire? Halfway through the gospel, the pacing shifts. The energetic ministry in Galilee ends, and Jesus begins a dark, focused journey south toward the capital. On the road, Jesus tells his followers that his path does not lead to a military victory. Instead, he explains that he will be handed over to the authorities to suffer and be killed. The disciples are baffled. Peter tries to argue against the plan, and the rest of the group begins debating which of them will hold the highest rank when the new kingdom begins. For Mark's Roman audience, the point was clear. In this movement, power is not measured by conquest, but by the willingness to sacrifice. The group finally arrives in Jerusalem for a confrontation with the center of institutional power. Mark uses a literary device analyzed here. He sandwiches one story inside another for comparison. In the inner layer, Jesus openly confesses his identity inside the palace. Outside, in the outer layer, Peter cowers and denies him. Jesus stands firm. Peter fails. This leads to the crucifixion, where Jesus utters a final, desolate scream in Aramaic. Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? It is at this moment, when Jesus is most vulnerable and humiliated, that the messianic secret is finally broken. The first person to truly recognize him is not a disciple, but the Roman centurion in charge of the execution. 3 days after the burial, the women arrive at the tomb and find it empty. They are told to go and tell Peter and the disciples that Jesus has risen. But Mark's original text ends in a way that shocked the early church. According to verse 16:8, the women flee in terror and tell no one. This unresolved ending led scribes to add 12 verses for closure, leaving visible seams in the transition. But Mark's original cut served a specific purpose for a persecuted audience. It mirrored their own reality, a world where fear often leads people to hide the truth. By showing the failure of the first disciples, the gospel breaks the fourth wall. It leaves the story unfinished, forcing the viewer to decide if they will remain silent in fear or pick up the mission where the original followers dropped it.